Many years ago, when the internet was young, there was a brief era that I shall call the era of offendedness. During this time, people figured out that they could get things like social cachet, power, even money, by being publicly offended. Now, sometimes the things that people took offense at were legitimately pretty offensive. Other times, and more so as this era went along, the things people were offended by were contrived and ridiculous. Yet at the height of this brief era of madness, the expectation was that the impetus is on you, the potential offender, to imagine what I, the potential offendee, might be offended by. And if you don't know and keep up on it, because it does change very quickly, then you will have committed a great internet sin. You will have offended someone. And certain offenses were more allowed than other offenses, but let's be honest, when everything was done and the age of offendedness was over, pretty much every group, every special interest, every set of hobbyists, every vocation, everybody had at least tried this on once to see if they could get anything for the common misconceptions or criticisms that were often, they believed, unfairly leveled at them in internet discourse. Thankfully, this era has passed on into other difficult eras, like the era of here's two middle fingers at everything. I didn't like the era of offendedness very much, so now I'm going to just do the era of offensiveness on purpose. That's disappointing as well. I yearn for the era of try to be nice to people and give people the benefit of the doubt and like each other and build beautiful things together. I'm working on it. It's part of what I'm hoping that maybe you and I are building together, just some tiny bit here. All of that to say, during the age of offendedness, I once got accused of an offense called stolen valor. It was a public accusation that I got, and it was dumb and it was wrong. And I did not steal valor. And the whole story is really quite funny, but it didn't feel funny in the moment because the person who was mad at me knew me in real life. They didn't pull me aside. They didn't give me a quick call or shoot me a text and be like, hey, what were you doing here? That seems offensive. They just nuked me on an internet site. And this is before I did the kind of stuff I do now. So that wasn't fun at all. But maybe you're like, well, what is stolen valor? I don't remember that offended thing. Stolen valor is when somebody who didn't serve in the military or didn't work in life-threatening emergency responder kind of public safety professions acts like they did. This is where people claim to be a veteran, but they never put their life on the line and never went through the difficult paces of military service to serve their country, but they still want all of the credit and the pats on the back and the thank you for your services, sir, of having done that, even though they didn't do it. So basically they're lying, and understandably, like if I'd served in the military, I would be offended by that. I think it's, like I mentioned earlier, there were reasonable offenses in here. That's a reasonable offense. But before I get on to the point I'm making, I would like to defend myself. We were making a movie. It's the finest action film ever made. It's very short. It's only 24 minutes long, but that's all it took to make the finest action film of a generation. And the film was called The Drug Stopper. It's an apolitical movie making fun of how those movies back then used to be like, we will stop the bad guy who deals the drugs in Miami, no matter how much we have to blow up and no matter how much collateral damage we do. So we just made fun of all the dumb action movie tropes of the 2000s. I don't know what we were doing. I thought it was kind of funny at the time. I still think it's kind of funny. In it, I did a horrible job of portraying a military general who barked out orders and grumbled and growled about things. Don't get me wrong, this is not a good performance, but in the course of doing so, I was wearing fatigues. I had on some sort of military outfit that we bought from a store or something. And then people started posting clips and it started making the rounds on the internet and whatnot. And somebody I knew saw it, and they wrote this whole nasty post about me where they're like, crisis alert, that's stolen valor. And I was like, it's acting, dude. Like, just read the context of the post. This is obviously a person in a ridiculous pose doing ridiculous things in a cinematically lit setting. It's acting. So I don't even remember how it worked out. I think we talked. Maybe it got better. Whatever. It was a different era of the internet. God bless everybody. The point is that I wanted to tell you that story and talk about the era of offendedness. The other point is that stolen valor thing, that's a pretty legitimate thing to be irritated by when it actually happens, that is. It's crappy when you had to endure a whole bunch of stuff for the credit that culture rightly gives you, and somebody else wants all the same credit, but they didn't do it. They lied. They never put their neck on the line. In fact, they were cowards and actually were kind of traitors and worked for the opposite side, but now they want all the credit of being a part of the brave, courageous, heroic side that did the right thing. No, we're going to set the record straight on that. Likewise, that's Paul's accusation in Galatians chapter 6, and unlike the unfounded accusation against me in the early days of the internet for stolen valor, this one actually sticks. It's legit. Paul is saying these people want all of the credit of being Christian teachers who are out doing the work of the Lord to serve people and help people for the Lord, and they've gone through so much, and they just want that to be acknowledged, just all they've gone through. But they haven't. They're liars and frauds. They haven't gone through anything. All of their theology, Paul is saying, is built around avoiding the very persecution real Christians and Paul have had to endure. This is how he calls them out. Galatians 6:11. See what large letters I use as I write to you with my own hand. Those who want to make a good impression outwardly are trying to compel you to be circumcised. The only reason they do this is to avoid being persecuted for the cross of Christ. Not even those who are circumcised obey the law, yet they want you to be circumcised, that they may boast about your flesh? Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it part. That was a paraphrase. I added that. Paul didn't say that part, but he's basically saying that part. The accusation here is so simple. I'm Paul. At this point that we're to Galatians, we're about, halfway through the book of Acts, and we've already seen all kinds of atrocities perpetrated against Paul and other legitimate Christian leaders in that amount of time. We're talking floggings. They got their backs turned into hamburger with whips and bones and rocks in it and stuff publicly. We're talking getting hit with rocks that people threw at you. Like one guy, Stephen, got hit with rocks so much that he died from it. Paul looked like he was dead from getting hit by rocks and got his body dragged off. And then it turned out that I guess he was okay. He got better and stuff. They've been in jail. They've been arrested. They've been held in unpleasant conditions. They've been in jail. Oh, yeah. Another guy, James, got killed by Herod at the beginning of Acts chapter 12. All of this kind of stuff has already happened, even if we go with the earliest date for the writing of Galatians. There's a badge of honor to be worn now if you stand up for the true thing. What is the true thing that all of these Christians, all of these disciples of Jesus, the early apostles had in common? Well, here's one of them. They were crystal clear on what the message of the gospel was, the good news. What was that message? Salvation is by Christ and not by your works. Salvation is by the work of Christ on the cross and his resurrection. That's what all of those Christian leaders affirmed in Paul in Acts chapter 15. That's why they gave Paul the right hand of fellowship, as Paul references earlier in the book of Galatians when he went to Jerusalem. They were all like, yep. Well, Paul got there different than we did. He met resurrected Jesus on the road to Damascus, but how do we know that was real? Well, Paul used to be killing Christians, and then all the people who were with him on that trip are like, Jesus showed up. And then he went blind, and our guys up in Damascus vouched for that. Then he went not blind after that. Then somehow in the midst of that, he just gets the gospel message of Jesus with such precision that it's like he was around the campfire with us 12 disciples when we were there. Yeah, he's real. He met Jesus. We know what Jesus sounds like. It sounds like that. This checks out. This is the real thing. There's miraculous confirmation from the Holy Spirit. Paul is legit. His message is legit. And the gospel that he's proclaiming in Galatians and all these other churches is legit. That is what the leaders of the church, that is what the followers of Jesus who knew him best all agreed to. And they trusted that Paul had truly encountered Christ so much that even Peter, who's basically the leader of that crew, when he steps out of line, Paul is so legitimate. Paul is positioned and has the respect and the clout to call out Peter for getting it wrong. So even Peter gets corrected by Paul. Yeah, he's legitimate. He's the real deal. What do all these guys have in common in addition to teaching the true gospel? They're all taking a beating for teaching it. Well, I made it sound like there's ongoing beatings. For some of them, they're already dead, like James. So now along come these clowns who do not bear the marks of persecution, who have not suffered I mean, in the early days here, the persecutors of Christians were Jews. Later, it's going to be Romans. But right now, it's primarily Paul's old classmates who are persecuting Christians, who are inflicting these wounds on them. And they are very keen to see the Old Testament law upheld and very threatened by Jesus' teachings and the early Christian leaders' teachings that life and right standing with God is through Christ, not through strict adherence to our expanded law that's even bigger than what's in the Old Testament, not through strict adherence to this mark on every male body that is circumcision. I mean, circumcision, that's our dividing line. That proves that you're serious, that you gave something up for this. And now these Christians are striking at the heart of that? Yes, that was the tension. That was the friction in the early days of Christianity. And that is where the persecution overwhelmingly came from. Go read the book of Acts. That's what happened. Rome got into the act more later. So now along come these pseudo-Christians who basically are just teaching the Old Testament law plus a dash of Jesus, ostensibly. Like maybe they were straight up agents of the Pharisees who were showing up and didn't believe in Jesus at all, but were just trying to recruit this group back into the fold through deception. They sure don't sound like Christians as we learn things about them through the course of Galatians, but they show up and Paul's like, guys, look at them. If they're teaching truth, think about what you saw with all of the other Christian leaders. What do we all have in common? We teach this about Jesus and we're all beat to crap. Some of the beatings we got were from you guys before you were Christians. Remember? Like, did you have these guys just show you their backs? Was there any flogging marks on there? Oh, there weren't. Huh. Well, I wonder why they haven't been flogged much. You know, here's one theory, Galatian church. Maybe they haven't been flogged because they're working with the people who do the flogging. And they're actually saying the same thing and promoting the same message as the people who have been flogging us. Or maybe they are misguided representatives of Christ, but they just can't bring themselves to fully embrace the teachings of Christ because it's going to hurt. And they don't want to take the abuse that we've been willing to take for teaching the whole thing in the true way, the thing that you guys in Galatia accepted in the first place. Either way, their bodies don't bear the marks of this. They want to put marks on your bodies in the form of circumcision, but they don't bear any of the marks of the people who have paid the price and gone out into the world with a tough message, but a true message, a message of freedom and life and grace and forgiveness and the presence of the Spirit. No, they haven't gone out with that message. Instead, they've gone out with a message that they've trimmed down and neatly cropped into something that looks a little bit better, a message they think is less likely to ruffle feathers and get them in trouble. And Paul is saying it's no gospel at all. That's a false gospel. These are false teachers. I want to process all of this in one flow of thought. There's no way I'm getting it into one episode's worth. So I'm doing the abrupt pause thing here, and we're going to pick up right where we left off next time around on this thought. And I just want to keep going right now. So I'm going to do that, and then you'll hear the next part tomorrow. I think that all made sense. All right, that's plenty for now. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.